So I'm going to be going over chapter 259 and 260 for Fire Force today. And I have peeked both of the Raws, so I know what happens. So I'm not going to be making any like crazy predictions because I already know what happens. But I do want to go over these chapters, and there are a couple things that stick out that I think are mysteries that will probably remain mysteries. But we'll start there. So 259 starts out with Vulcan and Arthur still playing Dragon Question, and Arthur has encountered somebody in the game that is someone who joined his party earlier in the game and turned out to be an enemy who did a heel turn basically. And in the real world, Rekka is now fighting Karim, and his other friend who is someone they've been friends with since childhood. So it's an ultimate betrayal here. But the question is this the Rekka they grew up with? Which I think everybody in the community, even now, is debating this, like I did the last time we talked about this. Like, is it a doppelganger? Is it Rekka that was the one that Shinra faced because Rekka got frozen and then got shot through the chest by arrow, leaving the hole that he has now in the fight? Or is it a apparition of what Karim thinks of Rekka right in front of him? It just appeared. And then there could be a fourth option, which we'll go over later. But so Rekka is just basically going back and forth with Karim about why he feels betrayed and why his friends, needed to be with him in despair. Like his relentless optimism is I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Tainted is the best. I think tainted is the best way to say it. It's tainted in the sense that if Rekka had not been screwed with by Sumier, so later on in the chapter you find out that Sumier found Rekka early and was in the orphanage and then set him on his path with the White Clad. Even though he was working not in the shadows, he was working as like an undercover agent in the first. So if that had not happened, Rekka would be the most hopeful being on the planet. He would inspire hope in other people with his relentless optimism. And if you remember, when he was first introduced, Tamaki was obsessed with this guy, right? Before he did the horrible things to her. And I would imagine everybody in his unit was the same way. This is why it's so hard for them. So, he's pleading them to give in to despair. He says he was selected at the orphanage by Sumier to turn the planet into another sun. So she flat out told him the plan. And he was born to create supreme despair. And he ate it up because he, in his heart, wants to save the world. And if you tell a young child that to save the world is to ascend the planet, so to say, into a big ball of fire, and if you also tell, he probably was told that people are evil or humans are evil, and this is the natural progression of human evolution, and we just have to keep going because our current sun used to be an Earth, and it's a cycle, and it's going to go on and on and on. So, and this isn't really talked about in the manga. I'm speculating on how that conversation would even go down, honestly. As Sumier and Rekka, or I don't know, but so they go on and they fight, and they're going back and forth still, and it seems that Rekka isn't getting the upper hand, that Karim has the upper hand, but they do say something interesting, that the hole in Rekka's chest must be a representation of Karim's guilt. It's a hole in Karim's own heart. So this statement can confirm the speculation that this is a apparition from what is in Karim's subconscious. That's one theory. I have many theories on this. I'm going to give you one. So one of my earliest videos on Fire Force was about Shinra and Sho's mom, Madi, right? And if you go back to that chapter, there is a conversation with the doctor who is floored that it's true that this was a virgin birth because they did tests on Mari and did find out that she was a virgin. And he mentions that earlier a baby was born on fire. And if that's true, and not some sort of myth, I bet you that baby was Rekka. Which means, and this is speculation, this could not be anything. So don't fall in love with this idea. But, and it, you know, that could just be a colloquial story that the doctor is telling and never happened. But let's say it's true. That baby was Rekka. It would mean that Rekka is special, like Shinra Sho. And it would supply energy to my theory that certain beings that are in the real world prior to the collision with Adola, that they were manifested of sorts from either subconscious desires of the current population, subconscious desires of the old population, the ones that got wiped out in the first cataclysm, or, you know, walking myths that live in Adola, because Adola is the realm of ideas, and any idea or any belief will show up there. So that's one of my theories. I'm not saying it's true. Kubo would be best to leave this a mystery and let people talk about it for eons upon eons if this is true, especially when you go back and reread and when you rewatch this. So, flashback to Arthur. He's having a dilemma about this in the game. So everything that's happening in Dragon Question is having a parallel out in the world. So we saw Han versus his boss. Now we're seeing Rekka versus Karim, and the main character in Dragon Question has to fight one of his friends, his party members. You know, Arthur's really struggling with this. He's like, is it truly permissible to use violence? If you don't beat him, we can't afford to move forward. He's like, it's a chance for the player to level up. There's no way to get around him. So he's Vulcan's taking a very practical game approach to this. Vulcan's thinking about game mechanics only, and Arthur's role-playing. Arthur is a pro role player, so he's putting feeling into what his digital character would feel about fighting his friend. Well, Vulcan's like, we gotta move on mechanically here to get stronger to beat the final boss. And then you get a flashback to Karim and Rekka when they were younger, and how he was going to save all mankind. And you know, Karim is just, he says he's Rekka's always been talking about his dream, and then Karim kind of flips the script on him and says, I'll support your dream with all you got, saying, you know, he'll save the world, but he's not going to do it the way Rekka's going to do it. He's not going to do it by plunging the population in despair, turning the earth into a sun and destroying everybody. And Rekka responds that he's your best friend after all. So this character of Rekka probably thinks that Karim's giving in, but to what he wants to have done. But he pushes back and says, how your dream was envisioned, I wouldn't exactly call that saving the world. And so they go on, they battle, and the final chapter, 260, of this little small arc, has the battle continuing, but there's a lot more going on here. Let's see here. Nope, that's not it. The fight's going on. Other people are onlooking. Let's see. Captain Huyan is basically talking to another subordinate. He wants to help, but he knows he has to stand back because this one-on-one battle is going to give the people that they're all trying to save hope. And so they keep battling, and eventually, you know, Karim, second generation pyrokinetics, by the way, are super often overpowered compared to third sometimes, and Karim is one of them, by the way. Like, it's kind of crazy. So eventually Karim gets the upper hand in Rekka. I'm kind of just going to speed through this chapter because it's a lot of just fighting and back and forth about despair, beliefs, dreams. You know, Karim having the ability to cool Rekka's hot fire, which is one of his, you know, defining traits. But before Karim does the final blow, he does say to this version of Rekka, or whatever it is, that their friendship was real, just like your hot-blooded attitude, just like your sense of justice. He says, you might not know the truth, and it might end up betraying your dream, but our friendship is unshakable and a true friendship, and that's good enough. And at that point, the hole in Rekka's heart starts to get frozen from Karim's ability, and you get this kind of like let's say Rekka right now is a ghost with unfinished business. You've heard that myth, right? Like ghosts stay on the planet because they have things they were meant to do in life and they weren't able to do it. It's at this point, this version of Rekka seems to be like that, and at this final turn, it's like, I convinced my friend to save the world, maybe not the way I wanted, but he accepted my feelings. And he says, I never thought you'd betray me. And then he speaks out, keeping secrets from you guys made me feel so guilty. It felt like there was a hole in my heart. Because it's for our friendship that was true, and you all end up filling that hole. So the hole gets filled up with Karim's ice. And then the rest of Rekka's body gets engulfed in ice. He says, that's how it has always was. The hotter I burn, the more you'd cool me down. So showing that Karim and Rekka were opposites, but they were complements to each other prior to Rekka going crazy. You know, if Rekka went too far, Karim pulled him back and cooled him down, basically. And in the end, Rekka this time shatters into a million pieces. Like if you go back and watch that episode where he got frozen before and then got nuked by arrow, you don't see the ice construct explode. You see it explode here. And so the battle's over, and Karim is not feeling too good about him. You know, he's like, I had to kill Rekka for a second time. Is this all there is to me? And then, you know, he's doubting his place in the world right now. But I don't think this is shaking his hopeful attitude. You can doubt yourself and things that you have to do, but you aren't necessarily going to not push forward, so to say. You're not going to live in the past. So what's done is done. That's how I took that final chapter. And then we go back to Dragon Question, and Arthur's having a hard time because he just beat his friend, and Vulcan's there to, like, you know, tell him that he did good, Arthur, and everything's going. So, and then Vulcan's starting to question what the heck they're doing, because he knows the world's ending, and he's like, what are we doing here? And then that's the end of these two chapters. And the next two chapters I peeked at are revolving mostly around Arthur and Vulcan. And the world, the gist I got. I don't want to comment until I can read. My hiragana is decent, but there are some kanji characters in this that I couldn't even translate myself. So I will leave it up to the people who are much better at me than those things, and then I will comment on them. So I'm going to wait till the translation comes out. And we're likely to be behind for a while now, because I think the team is light right now, the translation team. So once again, round of applause to them. But yeah, the takeaway that I got from this chapter mostly is like the origin of Rekka, or Rekkas. Like, are we dealing with doppelgangers? Are we dealing with apparitions? You know, one of the theories I had earlier is that Dragon is not someone's doppelganger. He's just a creation of Arthur's mind. Maybe when Arthur was a young kid, prior to becoming a Pyro-Connected, playing this game and getting to the point where he lost and never returned to the game, that sparked an imagination of his to create Dragon on the other side. And there's a magnetic pull between them, which is the whole reason why Dragon even came back to the planet for Arthur, because it's like Dragon is his natural rival. And as rivals, they want to clash in battle. So we'll see about that. But that's just been my theory on this. And everything in the world now should be, you perceive it, it could show up. It doesn't even have to be, you know, it could be anything. It could be the real King Arthur could show up. What I will say, okay, so this is the one thing I did peek from the next Raw. There's two of them. But the first one has you holding a doll that is Excalibur from Soul Eater. That blew my mind. Another cameo, maybe. But, you know, maybe that's part of what we're talking about here. Maybe this is the birth of Excalibur. He's just perceived into existence. And then when whatever happens in this world, he sticks around. You know, I've said this before in earlier videos. I gave an example of this being a prequel to Soul Eater. I'm not I haven't fallen in love with that theory. If that doesn't come out to be true, I'm not going to be butthurt about it or anything like that. But let's say it was, that this is a prequel to Soul Eater. This could be the birth of Excalibur, and because that weapon, because Excalibur was, you know, a weapon basically able to turn into a weapon just like Soul was from Soul Eater, except he'd been around for eons and he had a relationship with death and all that kinds of stuff. So he'd be very, very old. So maybe this is the origin of that. We won't know. Or it's just a cameo. Could be nothing. There's so many Soul Eater cameos in this that you can't really tell if there's a greater meaning to it or if it's just, hey, remember this other series I did? You liked it, right? Here it is. It's that joke about all the fan service in the new Star Wars and stuff like that. Like, oh my God. Anyway, yeah. So that's all I got for Fire Force this week. Looking forward for the next 2 chapters to be translated. We'll probably be behind by a 3 here pretty soon. So just growing pains for niche manga. So